Hi, my name is Pete Swiderski. Today I want to give you a brief lesson on chords. In one of my other lessons we talked about major scales. We talked about how major scales can be very useful for you in jazz improvisation. So here on the page you'll see a major scale in 2 octaves. This is a C major scale. Notice it starts here on the 1st degree, and then it goes up 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Remember that 8th note is the same as the 1st note, just separated by 1 octave. Then if we continue on, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, you'll notice that these are the exact same notes that are happening in the first part of the scale, but just 1 octave higher. So here the 2nd degree is the same as the 9th degree, but 1 octave higher. The 3rd degree, the same as the 10th. The 4th, the same as the 11th, etc. And this goes all the way up until the 8th degree is the same as the 15th degree. So when we're playing a chord, we play our chords usually based on some sort of scale. So in this case, we're going to take our major scale that we have here in 2 octaves, and we're going to select certain pitches. Now the way that works is typically by starting with the root or the 1st pitch and going 1st pitch, 3rd pitch, 5th pitch, 7th pitch, and then the 9th pitch. So a standard chord would be basing in a major scale the root, the 3rd, the 5th. That's kind of the basic triad, it's called, because it has 3 notes. And then that can extend out. Now if you wanted to put an octave on the end of that one, a basic triad, you go root, 3rd, 5th, and then the octave. But in jazz, typically what we do is we extend that chord out to the rest of the degrees. We go 7, and then 9. So root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, 9. 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. This is the typical chord that we would use in jazz. Now if you want to extend that out, you can also extend it up to the 11th and the 13th. Now you'll notice again that the 15th here is really just a repeat of the root. So typically you won't see chords with a 15 in them. You'll see chords that will go all the way up to 13, but rarely, or you wouldn't ever see one to the 15 because it's redundant. So let's say I wanted to play a C major chord. It might look like something like this. A C would be the chord symbol. Now that C is usually going to be followed by some sort of indicator for major, like this. This indicates C major. It could also be C capital M. Another way is C M A J, indicating major. These are the most standard ways, abbreviations for C. You might also just see a C by itself with nothing else on it. Now when it comes to the extensions on the chord, they'll be followed by, let's say we have C major, and it could be followed by 7. It could say C major 9, 11, 13, any of those degrees can be on there. Now for me, no matter what it says, C major 7, C major 9, 11, or 13, I'm always going to treat it the same. I'm always going to treat it the same. Now you're thinking to yourself, why do they bother to even put a different extension on it if I'm always going to treat it the same in the first place? Let me show you a little bit. So if I see C major, I know that I can use a C major scale. Now a C major scale is going to be the chord note, or the pitches that we see right here on the page. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Those are my pitches that are available to me right here. Now if I see a C, or if I choose to use chords instead of scales, then I'm going to use the 1st, the 3rd, the 5th, the 7th, right? And typically I always think of the 9th in there. Now let's look, if I take and extend this chord up to 9, 11, 13, let's pretend that we take that 9 and we drop it down an octave. So it suddenly becomes the same as the 2nd, We take the 11, drop it down an octave, it becomes the 4th. We take the 13, drop it down an octave, it becomes the 6th. And now if you look at it, if we take a chord and extend it all the way up to the 13th degree, we're really playing a major scale. So there's our 1, our 3, our 5, our 7, our 9, our 11, and our 13. So for your money, a major scale is really just a chord that's realized all the way to the 13th with the notes in between the standard 1, 3, 5, 7 pitches. So really, playing a major scale, playing a chord, it's all the same thing. You're still using the same pitches. Now why would we bother to use chords rather than scales? Chords are selecting certain pitches of the scale, the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, and those particular pitches are going to really define what it is that the ear is hearing as far as the chord. So a bass player and a piano player are going to define the chord, and the guitar player, they're going to define the chord with those particular pitches, 1, 3, 5, 7, 9. Now that doesn't mean that the other pitches aren't important. Sometimes in jazz we talk about pitches being more colorful than other pitches. But root, 3rd, 5th, 7th, those are kind of the basic ones. If you had to pick 2 and 2 only, I would probably end up picking the 3 and the 7 as kind of the foundational chord tones that I'd use. I'll explain that a little more in detail later. But certain chord tones like the root, the 1, and the 5, they tend to be important, but they tend to be boring. They tend to be very foundational. But if you start listening to chords, you'll hear that different pitches like the 2nd, the 3rd, you know, the 9th, which is the same as the 2nd, the 7th, those are kind of those chord tones that give a little more color to the note. So if I'm hearing a C major chord, I'm probably going after 3, 7, 9 more than I'm going to go after 1 and 5. Now those are great if you're just using them passing. In other words, if you're playing a scale and you started on 2 and then you went 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, that'd be great. It'd be less effective if you started on 1 and then went 2, 3, 4, 5. So you start on kind of a bland, boring pitch, you end on a bland, boring pitch with 5. It's much more effective to do something like 2 to 7, going up in scales. I'll get into more detail on this later, but this is just a primer on what chords are. Basically, they're just selected pitches from a major scale, and if you go all the way to the top of a chord to 13, you're really just playing an entire major scale but using a different order. Hope this was helpful. Thanks.